Welcome to Flat, Cool, and Acid-Free, an OK State Archives podcast, bringing you stories about Oklahoma State University and Oklahoma. I'm Nina Thornton, multimedia producer for the OSU Libraries. The Cowboy Marching Band and Spirit Bands, getting us prepped and pepped for the football games, bringing all the vibes to campus. The Cowboy Marching Band, or CMB, is steeped in tradition. At every performance and rehearsal, band members sing the OSU alma mater in 4-part harmony. Before home games, they perform a concert outside the Bartlett Center, and when it's game time, they launch the game with a series of lively performances on the football field. The band is the best of us at OSU. They are the culture keepers of game day. Culture keepers. Well, that's interesting. If the archives holds materials from the band, the records, they're the institutional memory for OSU. Are we also culture keepers? Ben, help me out.
My name is Benjamin Hedges. I am the University Records Archivist here at the Special Collections and University Archives Department.
Let's talk a little bit about OSU marching bands, OSU bands, and some of the things that we have in the archives. What do we have here?
So we have a number of different items and different materials that are kind of spread out over a few different collections. A lot of photographs, many of which are in our Albert Lind collection. Albert Lind was a former marching band director, I think in the late 60s, I think up to about 1972. So we have photographs, kind of the formation charts, like how the bands would get into formations, a lot of the photos of their practices, a lot of photos of them in uniform. We also have a lot of audio recordings of band performances spanning a number of decades, 90s, 80s, 70s, I think even as far down as like into the 40s as well. Of their performances at games, I think of special performances. And then finally, we actually, through our music department collection, have a uniform, an actual marching band uniform that was worn by one of the band members. We have one of their jackets that's kind of maybe a little bit more darker orange than what we're used to seeing with the current OSU orange, but a lot of nice tassels and fringe on it, as well as a set of trousers that are kind of set up the same way with that same fringe and that more brownish orange, I'd say, than like the brightest orange that we're normally used to seeing. But that's kind of the scope. There's a lot of other photos that are spread around. Other collections, like our main photo collection, we have a collection of almost 40,000 plus photos just in our main collection alone. And I know it's peppered throughout with a lot of band performances and photographs of the bands in the stadiums.
And on the music front, just in general, we have like the OSU alma mater, sheet music, things like that.
Yeah, we do. We have some of the sheet music. Not quite sure what collection they're in. I think that's another one that's spread out through music department, as well as a couple other probably alum collections that we have throughout our archives.
How does the band contribute to the culture of OSU? Which led me into the archives holding so much of our music and this band collection, this PEP collection. How are we culture keepers?
The way I would think about it is like thinking about culture in general. How do we think about culture? What do we deem to be culture? So we always kind of think of it as maybe on the scale of like within a certain country that you'd visit, their culture, the art that they have, the food that you would eat there, their architecture, the festivals, all the other, and this is to borrow from I had to look up the definition of culture just to kind of get a better sense of how I would explain this, but the manifestations of a certain group of people or an institution or a society. So thinking in terms of how an archive is a culture keeper, obviously we can't hold food. We're not eating in the archive. We're not able to, archive are the buildings that we have here at OSU. But in a sense, we maintain the culture by collecting the manifestations of the people of OSU. So, and not just the people, but the institutions, the organizations, the groups. So, in the sense of, as an example, for the marching band, we have this uniform. We have a piece of marching band history that we can show to people years from now. We have the sheet music that they've used, the kind of music that they played at different points and times during OSU's history. And that can come in the form of just the sheet music, but also the recordings that we have. And then we also have the photographs that show the work that they've done, that spirit that they've generated throughout OAMC and OSU history. So just in that one example right there, we're maintaining that culture of the band and showing how it affected OSU throughout history and up to this point.
And even the music, like you said, the music selections were different throughout the
Exactly.
40s, more complex.
Yes.
As time went on. So like their formations in general got more complex. So it's just telling that story of how the culture of that little micro community.
Yeah, it's very much kind of plotting a path. That's how they've grown and how it's changed, definitely.
So how do we in the archives help tell the cultural story and the story of OSU in general?
So we have a mission in the archives, and that's to save, secure, and share the history of OSU, the story of OSU. And so we save by assessing value of materials that we take into the archive. That can be materials that we seek out through different departments in and around OSU. That could be saving through the donations that people might make. So somebody might have their own OSU marching band uniform that they want us to keep and they want us to preserve. And then we secure it by obviously preserving it, making sure that it's housed correctly, making sure that it's is put into containers and into storage spaces that preserve it for as long as we possibly can. And finally, we secure it by putting it into some sort of catalog so that it's discoverable. I mean, it doesn't matter all this work that we do if there's no way that people can access it and be able to utilize these materials for research, for nostalgic curiosity. And that kind of runs into the last part of our mission, which is to share the story of OSU. We pride ourselves in making sure that almost everything, barring anything that we would be legally restricted from making public, we make sure it's all available to our patrons, that researchers, both inside OSU and outside of OSU, community members, people outside the state that would want to look at these materials, we make sure that they can have access to those materials through the work we do in the metadata and description that we use for these materials and how we house them and how we can make them available.
And which I guess is the last question here, but what's our responsibility as keepers of OSU culture and culture through our collections? What's our responsibility in telling that story?
There's a huge responsibility because a person that would be in my position as an archivist is making, in a sense, kind of the ultimate decisions about what stays in our archive and what doesn't stay. And you have to maintain an understanding that there's so much out there, you have to have the ability to tell a full story. And so we have a responsibility as we in archives are looking more into like the idea of reparative description, reparative archiving, understanding where the gaps exist in what we collect. And so, you could think of it in terms of race, of gender, of sexuality, of creed, of belief systems, but it can go more into voices in research, that we utilize here at OSU. Research is an important part of a research institute like OSU. So we want to make sure that as many voices as we possibly can find in research, in agriculture, in arts and sciences, we want to make sure we can find materials that relate to that as well, and we can tell that full scope, that full story. So we don't want to be gatekeepers. We don't want to make sure that we're holding back any materials that we have on hand that people can't access if we have the choice to. We don't want to be that kind of archive. We want to make sure that...
Talk to me a little bit about that notion of archives as culture keepers.
So it goes back into that sense, and I guess I needed to think more about the culture in general and what culture means to OSU. So I think that when you first approached me about this, I had to start thinking to myself, what do I deem to be culture here at OSU? So it got me thinking, it got me looking through a lot of my archive and a lot of the archives throughout, our department's history. and finding the prominent aspects, seeing what is truly representative of OSU. So looking at some of the archival research that we've done, some of the partnerships that we've had throughout, our history. One of the prominent ones being a partnership we had with the country of Ethiopia and the archival research that we've done with them, looking at figures in our archive like Frank Eaton, Pistol Pete's, some of the homecoming traditions that we've had throughout our history, finding all the marching band stuff that we've had and going back and listening to some of the recordings, finding a lot of the photographs. So it's given me a lot more cause to kind of think about the culture of OSU. What is the culture of OSU? What are the important aspects of OSU's culture?
This episode was produced by me, Nina Thornton, with guest Ben Hedges from the Special Collections and University Archives here at OSU. Theme music is It's a Process, composed by Ben Stone and Finley Green, and published by BBC Production Music, PRS. From the folks at Oklahoma State University Libraries and the Archives, thanks for listening. And always remember to keep your archival material flat, cool, and acid-free.